Hi there. Welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Kelly Bailey. I am a certified holistic health coach and also a certified personal trainer. Today we're going to be doing an episode where I give you my take on meal planning. So I'm going to take you through in a stepwise fashion. So the first thing that I do is I'm figuring out what my protein is going to be. For the most part, that's either going to be chicken or beef. And usually on Sunday or Monday, I'm gonna cook a whole lot of it. So that's gonna be Monday night's dinner. So that's what I'm serving my family, but I'm trying to make enough where I can repurpose that meat or that protein into other dishes. So we're gonna be starting with cooking our protein today. Step 2 is gonna be to chop all of the veggies. If I'm feeling really on top of things, I'll chop them all on a Sunday or a Monday afternoon, and I will throw them into a container and just put them all in the fridge, and then I usually just use it as I go. Step 3 is going to be to make the dressings. So I'm usually either doing some sort of a chicken salad or a chopped salad for my lunches. And so I usually do a couple of dressings that are homemade. And then step 4 is to assemble the meals. A lot of times I'm deciding on the fly what I want to eat that day. So as long as I have my protein cooked, as long as I have my veggies chopped, as long as I have my dressings made, I can usually kind of throw in what I want for that day. But you absolutely can, get your meal container set out and you can prep these things in advance if that's what you would prefer to do. So we are going to start by cooking our protein. All right, so the first step is to cook your protein. Again, this is something that I might do a day ahead, the day before. If we're making a dinner on Sunday, I'm just gonna cook extra protein. This might be in the crock pot. It might be pan fried, it might be baked. A lot of times we're grilling or smoking the meats. So it really just depends on what you prefer to do. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna make this pretty simple. I'm only gonna cook a couple of chicken breasts today, and I'm gonna chop these up into cubes, and then I'm gonna cook them in a pan. What I will say is if you are using, if you're pre-cooking a protein for meal prep, you probably don't want to season it too much. So what I typically do is just do a little bit of salt and pepper on the protein. And that way, when I put a dressing on it later on that week, when I'm using it for a lunch or I'm repurposing, it already is a fairly mild flavor. So I don't have to worry about mixing flavors. That said, like if I make taco meat or if I make something that already has a bunch of seasoning, I will still use the dressings that I made or that I'm going to make on those. So you can do whatever works best for you, whatever you like to do. All right, and then as I said, I am going to cube this or at least just kind of rough cut it. We are going to take this and we're just going to shove it in the pan. And so as I said, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper to this. I'm going to cook it all the way through. And then ideally what you will do is you're going to allow your protein to cool. So you can, if you were just making this and you're prepping a meal for right then, you can definitely eat your proteins warm. But as far as meal prep goes and storing things and putting the dressings and then putting it also in with your veggies, you would want to use cooked and cooled protein. So ideally you would cook this chicken and then you would let it sit in the refrigerator for a few hours before mixing it into your veggies and your dressings. So you just want to make sure that your protein, whatever that you're using, is cooked all the way through. And since we're on the subject of protein, being a health coach for the past almost 10 years, what I do find is that when I'm doing a nutrition assessment on someone, almost 9 times out of 10, they are low in protein intake. So if you follow the RDI or the RDA, for protein. For women, it's about 46 grams, and for men, it's 56. But it's very outdated. And what you need to remember is that those recommendations are based on you not getting a deficiency disease. But we're not after just avoiding disease. We want optimal health. So for most people, if you are not exercising, you probably want to shoot for 80 to 100 grams of protein per day. Most people that I do nutrition assessments on are only getting somewhere between 50 and 60 grams per day. And they wonder why they don't feel good, they don't have energy, they feel lethargic, they feel like their muscles are weak. Hair sometimes is falling out. If you're not getting enough protein, your body's going to be in an energy crisis. And you're also going to feel hungry all the time. So if you get a lot of cravings, that could be another. Protein is huge for satiety. So I am always looking at protein first when I'm doing a dietary analysis. And that's usually where we start, which is also why you will notice that the meals that I'm making today, the meals that I'm preparing today are going to be very heavy on the protein. I'm typically trying to get somebody to eat 30 or more grams of protein per meal. And yes, the protein can come from both animal and plant sources, but as a general rule, I am big on animal-based sources of protein. They are absorbed by the body better than plant-based sources. So animal-based sources of protein are absorbed at a rate of about 90 to 95% by your body. Plant-based is somewhere between 70 and 75 or 70 and 80%. I'm kind of breaking up some of these chunks. It looks pretty well cooked. I'm going to remove it from the heat. I'm going to let that set for a few minutes. I'm going to put it in an airtight container, and I'm going to throw it in the fridge to let it cool. So we're going to get these, we're going to move on to step 2, and we are going to chop all of our veggies. So this very fancy container is what I would put all of my veggies into and just store it in the fridge. And that way I'm going to have it so I can just kind of dish out veggies as I want to throughout the week. I absolutely love chopped salads. So I can make those on the fly. As I said, you can absolutely use meal prep containers and prep these things in advance too once you get everything chopped. Now, as far as the amounts of these things that you're going to need, that's kind of a trial and error. That's a little bit of a learning kind of thing. So, you'll maybe do 1 week of this prep and you'll realize at the end of the week, like, ooh, I had a little bit too much, or maybe you didn't have quite enough. So you'll figure that out as you go along. But this is probably the worst part of it. I despise chopping vegetables. So if you can get this done all on the same day and then it's just sitting in your fridge, makes it a whole lot likely that not only are your vegetables not going to go to waste, but you're more likely to stick with your healthy eating routine if the stuff is already kind of pre-cut. And you could leave some of these, like, these bell peppers, I might leave a few of these whole like this, sliced, instead of chopping them up. And that way, if I need like a quick snack or something, I can just grab those. So I'm going to go ahead and throw those into here. I think I'm going to might as well just chop the rest of this. I really like bell peppers, so I know this will get eaten. Like I said, this is not a science. Rough chop. I used to have a vegetable chopper. Was definitely worth the investment to get one of those if you chop a lot of vegetables. All right, we're gonna move on to some cukes. If you don't like the skins, feel free to peel the skins off. These little baby cucumbers are my absolute favorite. They usually have a nice crunch. And the skin is really thin on these. So if you're one of those people that doesn't like the skins, you might be able to handle the skin on these ones. All right, I feel like that's probably going to be enough. We are going to move on to some cherry tomatoes. I just cut these in half. If you want to cut them smaller, you can do that. There's kind of a yucky one. I'm going to cut my onion last because it makes everything smell like onion. And with the onion, I will often store that in a separate container. Otherwise, you might find that all of your vegetables that you chopped will end up tasting like onion. And I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the onions I've been getting recently, even the ones that say sweet onions, they seem so strong to me. I love chopped cauliflower in a salad. The finer you chop it, the finer you can chop it, I feel like the better it is because it holds dressing really well. Same with broccoli. And it's great filler. So tons of fiber, great nutrients. All right, we'll call that enough for right now. And we should be good with that. I'm going to use a slightly bigger knife for this. And for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, you've got to cut the stumps off of that. No, no, no. There's a lot of nutrition in those stumps, and that's why you're going to finely chop this stuff so that you won't even know. When you buy the riced cauliflower at the store, take a good look at it. It's not the cauliflower heads, it's the stems. Try to leave no veggie behind. Vegetables are pretty expensive, and so it's hard to see them go to waste. Okay, but I do like to finely chop all of this. It'll hold the dressings really well, and it'll make for really tasty salads. Okay, and I think that's plenty of cauliflower. So even my little container here is not quite big enough, but that's okay. We're gonna make it work. Okay. And even though some of these veggies are gonna get used in different things and they might get a little bit mixed together, it's not a big deal. So if you end up with some veggies that weren't necessarily supposed to be in one recipe and a few of them end up in there. Okay. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of broccoli. Now I will cut some of not all of the stump is gonna go into there, but like a little bit in there doesn't bother me. Like I said, you're missing out on some of the nutrition if you're only eating the heads. Okay. I'm going to put all of this in what last little bit of space I've got left here. And then we're going to move on to the red onion. Again, I'm not going to put the red onion in with the other vegetables. And I'm probably only going to do about a third of this. I don't like a ton of onion. So if you want more, you can definitely chop up more. And so what I usually do with the onion is I just take a separate baggie and I throw the onion in there. And then I might just rest it on top of the other veggies in the fridge. So again, as far as meal prep goes, this is what you're usually going to see, something more like, this is what you're going to see sitting in my fridge. You're not necessarily going to see the meals already put together. I'm going to set this in my fridge covered, and then when it comes time for me to prepare my meals, I can just really quickly throw everything together. I'll have my dressings made, I have my protein cooked, and I've got my veggies chopped. It makes it really, really easy. All right, so the next step we're going to be moving on to is making the dressings.
When we say don't trust your internet to just anyone, we mean it. At Armstrong, our network is monitored 24/7 by multiple highly trained engineers, not just a single person. What else? If you ever have a problem, all service visits are free. That's right, we come to your home to fix things, unlike those other guys. Armstrong, unmatched employees, unmatched technology, unmatched fiber network.
All right, so now we are going to make the dressings. It's great if these dressings can have like 24 hours to sit, but you can use them right away if you want to also. So the first dressing that I'm gonna make is actually, I believe, one that I've made before for the Armstrong channel, but it's probably one of the dressings I love the most, and I probably use it more frequently than any other one, and that is the dill dressing, the cucumber dill. So it's a Mediterranean dressing, so it's the tzatziki dressing. So the base on this one is going to be Greek yogurt, so plain Greek yogurt. I do use full fat Greek yogurt. It tastes better to me. And we're also gonna have cucumber that's gonna be grated, a little bit of garlic. Don't use too much garlic in this because it will be overpowering. So this is one of the few instances where I will actually only use 1 clove of garlic. A little bit of white wine vinegar or red wine vinegar, some good olive oil, salt, pepper. I like to throw a little bit of za'atar seasoning in there, and then dill. So we're going to go ahead and we're gonna grate the cucumber. And you can see that I've got like a little strainer here. I'm gonna grate it into the strainer because we want some of the liquid to drain off. I would also recommend that, these are these baby cucumbers, so the skin is not, it's not real tough, and they're pretty much seedless. If you have regular cucumbers, you might want to cut them in half and take the seeds, so scoop the seeds out, and you also might want to take the skin off of those before you grate them, because it can give the dressing a little bit of a bitter flavor. But these little baby cucumbers, they don't seem to cause me any troubles. Okay, getting rid of that. I'm gonna get rid of all this. We're gonna save this because we're gonna use it to grate the garlic. And so you've got just a little bit, and you can see it's got quite a bit of liquid in it. I'm gonna squeeze even more of that. So I'm actually gonna squeeze some liquid out. You don't want it too liquidy. You don't have to squeeze all of it out though. All right, we're gonna throw that in our bowl. Chop our garlic up here, not chop, we're gonna get rid of the skin and then we're gonna grate it. Okay. Just watch your fingers when you're doing this. Okay. Now for the one cucumber, I only grated one cucumber. I would say you're probably gonna wanna use maybe 3/4 of a cup or maybe 1 full cup of your Greek yogurt. The garlic really shines through in this one, even with a small amount. Normally when a recipe calls for garlic, I triple the amount, at least double the amount, but I think I did that the first time I made this and it was too much. It kept the vampires away. Okay. And we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil, probably about maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons. This is not something I tend to measure. It does turn out a little bit different every time. Probably a few tablespoons of your vinegar, a few shakes of salt, some black pepper. Now, I really like dill, so this is probably about a tablespoon of dill right here, maybe a little bit more. I'm definitely going to use all of that. If you don't like dill, use less. And then the Mediterranean seasoning, so za'atar seasoning, this is just going to be a shake into there. You're going to mix this up really well. And then you could taste it to see if you need more salt in it, if you need more of the vinegar. You could also use lemon juice in this in place of the vinegar. So you can see that this actually makes quite a bit of dressing. You can also use this as a veggie dip. It's really, really good as a veggie dip. You could thin it out a little bit with some water or a little bit more vinegar too, if you want it to be more of like a thinner dressing that you could pour onto salads, or we're going to be putting it into like a chicken salad kind of a dish for our meal prep. But when I go to use this to make like my lunch, I'm probably going to use about 2 tablespoons of that. All right, so we're gonna set this aside and we're gonna make sure that we refrigerate that. All right, the next dressing that we're gonna make, it doesn't really have a name. I decided to start using this in meal prep because I had made a whipped feta dish with marinated chickpeas over the holidays, and it was a real hit. And I absolutely loved the dressing on the chickpeas so much that I thought this might be a really good thing for like a dressing for meal prep. So that's what we're gonna do today. So you're gonna need 2 tablespoons of olive oil to start. Again, I'm not really gonna measure this. I'm gonna go, that looks about right. 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. The smoked paprika, it's really important that it gives it a really nice smoky flavor. So it doesn't taste quite the same if you use regular paprika. So again, I'm kind of going to just measure this by eye. That looks like about maybe a little bit more than 2 teaspoons, but I really like smoked paprika. If you don't, use less. Dried oregano. As I looked through my cabinet this morning 3 times to try to find the dried oregano, I realized that I have 6 containers of cumin and no oregano. So what we're going to use today is a little bit of Italian seasoning because there is usually some oregano. I do like the oregano flavor in this too, so hopefully if you're making this, you have oregano in your kitchen. Again, I'm not going to use too much of this because it has a whole bunch of other stuff in it too. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. A little bit of fresh cilantro. So about 3 tablespoons of fresh chopped cilantro. This is another one of those, some people love cilantro and some people hate it. So if you don't like cilantro, just don't put it in there. That looks like about good. Looks like this is a little bit too much for me, so I'm only going to put in 1. There we go. Need the rest of that. Then we are going to add in just a little bit of sea salt. Not too much on that. You can always add more later, but you can't take it out once it's in. A little bit of fresh ground pepper. And then finally, we are going to do some lemon zest. So I'm going to use my zester for what its true intention is. And also we're going to add in some lemon juice. So I'm just going to press these to kind of help the juice get flowing. All right, and then I'm going to zest it first. I like a lot of lemon zest. Really gives it that essence. Okay. And as far as the number of lemons, I would go with just 1 to start. And if you don't feel like it's enough, you can always add more. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to pour not all of it, most of it in. And there's one ingredient that I almost forgot, and that is just a little bit of honey. So just about maybe a teaspoon, that's probably more like a tablespoon. And if you like spice, you can add a little bit of Tabasco or Red Hot into it. I do like spice. Oops. Get rid of those. And then we are going to whisk this together so you can see that the paprika gives it that really nice dark red color. Now you might want to, if you are going to use this dressing, this one does not make nearly as much. So I might use, there's probably about 3 to 4 tablespoons right here. This might get me through 2 meals. So 2 of the salad meals that we're going to create. So if you end up really liking this dressing, you might want to double or even triple the recipe if you're going to use it throughout your week. And just like the other dressing, you're going to want to put this in an airtight container and store it in the fridge when you're not using it. Okay. And so now the only things we have to do are assemble our meals.
High school sports, community events, all of your favorite local shows are calling the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel their home. Find out everything your neighborhood has to offer on Channel 100 or on YouTube. Spirit, town pride, local communities. This is the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
All right, so we are on to step 4, and that is to assemble our meals. Now, for our first meal, I'm just going to demonstrate what I would typically do for breakfast in the morning. I am usually in a hurry because that is when I have most of my clients. So we're going to make a really simple egg bowl. And I don't know if you have ever cooked eggs in the microwave. I used to do this all the time in college. Again, would I prefer to cook them on the stove? Yes, but sometimes I really don't have time for that. So all I'm going to do is crack a couple of whole eggs. Now, eggs are a good source of protein, but they're not a great source of protein. So one egg probably has 6 or 7 grams of protein in it. So if you have 2 eggs, it's only about 12 grams of protein, somewhere between 12, 14, 15 grams, which really isn't that much. So we're gonna do some egg white. I would never tell you to just have an egg white omelet, okay? The fat in the eggs is okay to eat. But we're gonna do 2 whole eggs, and then we're gonna do a half a cup of egg whites. And that's gonna increase our protein because most of the protein in an egg is in the white. But again, I'm not into wasting egg yolks, and I'm also not into egg white omelets or just egg whites. Yuck. All right. So then we're going to take our egg whites. This is one of those things where I might actually measure it out because I am trying to hit a protein target. So we're going to measure out about a half. Oh, we're right at the line there. So I'm going to scramble these up a little bit in here. And one step that I forgot to take before this, you really should grease your bowl. So I usually spray a little bit of olive oil spray in the bowl beforehand, and I might wipe it around with a paper towel. It will help it to stop. It will help to keep it from sticking to the bowl. Again, not the end of the world if you forget that step like I just did. Okay, so that's kind of mixed up right there. Now this is where, again, if I was cooking this on the stove, I would probably cook my veggies a little bit first, and it would make it a little bit better, but I'm usually in a hurry, so we're gonna throw just a little bit of onion in here. Okay. And whatever veggies you want in there. So in my eggs, I really like peppers, bell peppers, and I actually really like broccoli. Okay, so I'm taking some of my pre-cut stuff and I'm going to throw it in there. And then we're going to save our cheese. You can use any sort of cheese, or you can use no cheese if you're not into cheese. But I usually put my cheese on after the eggs are cooked. So I use feta for everything. I love feta cheese, but you can use any kind of cheese that you like. I've also got salsa. I love to dump salsa on the eggs afterwards, after they're done cooking. I do usually put a little bit of some sort of seasoning. So sometimes it's taco seasoning, sometimes it's ranch seasoning. Today I happen to have a half a package of ranch seasoning still left open from something else I made. I really do like this Riega brand of seasonings because it's mostly whole ingredients. So this is sea salt, cane sugar, onion, garlic, mustard, parsley, thyme, black pepper. That's it. So there's no fillers, there's no preservatives. So I really do like these seasonings. So I'm just going to throw some of this seasoning in there. You might, if you use one of these seasonings, you probably don't need to use salt, but I will throw in a little bit of pepper. Finally, if you feel like you want some more plant-based protein in this, if you feel like you need some carbohydrates, maybe you just did a workout, you can throw some beans. I'm gonna throw a few black beans into this. Okay, we're gonna mix it up so everything kind of gets covered and mixed in. Get that seasoning mixed in. And then we're gonna microwave this. And what I do as far as the microwave, because it seems like every batch of this I make turns out a little bit different. I usually do 1 minute at a time. And sometimes it seems like it cooks in 5 minutes, and sometimes it seems like it cooks in 10. So, but 1 minute at a time, and you just want to cook it long enough so that the center of the bowl is, it's no longer liquid. All right, so I'm going to take this over to the microwave. And we're gonna start that cooking. So we ended up cooking this for about 5 minutes. Again, when you're cooking this in the microwave, you do want to do about 1 minute at a time, and you want to kind of keep an eye on it because it can kind of boil over a little bit if you're not careful. But you can see how nice this looks now. We've got a lot of veggies in there, so it's a breakfast that's full of veggies, healthy carbohydrates, lots of fiber, and a lot of protein, so it's gonna be really filling. So at this point, what I would do is I absolutely love salsa on my eggs, so I'm just gonna dump a little bit of salsa over the top. By the way, if you allow this to cool for a little bit, it's probably gonna be better. It's gonna be super hot when it comes out of the microwave. And then I'm also gonna add some feta cheese crumbles. You can use any kind of cheese you want, maybe except for Velveeta. Sorry, Velveeta. I like feta cheese and I like goat cheese because as far as cheeses go, they tend to have higher protein content, and they tend to be a little bit better because it's usually sheep's milk or goat's milk cheese. And for people who have sensitivities to dairy, it can be a little bit more tolerable for them. So again, the cheese and the salsa are optional. And then this is ready to go. You can cut it into almost like pizza slices. But again, this meal, you get to eat this whole bowl. So if you tend to be one of those people who's hungry, you're gonna eat this, and you're probably not gonna be hungry until lunchtime or maybe even after that. So that's meal number one, super easy. It's probably gonna take you less than 10 minutes to put that together as long as you have your other stuff prepped. So let's move on to our next meal prep. Our next meal prep item is going to be the Mediterranean chicken wrap. So I don't tend to put my stuff in the wrap because especially if you're gonna make this ahead or if you're throwing it in a lunchbox for later, soggy wraps are no good. So I use a low carb, high protein wrap, and there's many brands of these at the store, so find one that you like. I usually put these in a plastic bag and put them on the side, and then I will spoon my chicken salad or whatever it is I'm having that day into the wrap. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make this again. We have all of our stuff pre-made. So we have our cooked chicken, we have our dill dressing. I did open a can of chickpeas because with this particular recipe, I usually love the fiber and the plant-based protein that you can get from chickpeas. And then we've got our pre-cut veggies. So for this in particular, I almost always do, we're gonna throw tomatoes. Again, doesn't matter if you get a little bit of broccoli in here too, it's not gonna kill you. I like the red peppers, and I like cucumbers in this one. And yes, the dressing has cucumbers in it too. Let's see here, throw a few more tomatoes in here, and maybe I'll just throw a little bit of this in here, a little bit of extra green, and maybe we'll even do a little bit of the cauliflower since we cut it up. I will also recommend that you use large bowls when you go to mix these things. You want a large bowl because when you have all of these nice veggies, they take up a lot of space in the bowl. Same thing when they're in your stomach, they take up a lot of space. So if you tend to be one of those people who's extra hungry all the time, veggies are the way to go. So we're just gonna put maybe a 1/4 cup of these garbanzos or these chichis, whatever you wanna call them. We're gonna take half of the chicken that we cooked, ideally cooled off, so in the fridge so that it's cold. I'm gonna add a little bit of onion to this too. If you work in an office setting, you may wanna go light on the onion. These are very strong onions. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit of feta cheese on at the end, but now we're gonna put some dressing. So again, I'm probably gonna do, that's probably about 2 tablespoons. Maybe I'm gonna do more like 4 on this because there's a lot in there. And then I'm gonna mix this up. You might have to mix for a little bit. Like I said, if you feel like the dressing is too thick, you can always add water, or you can add a little bit more vinegar to it, whatever you feel like it needs. But this is mixing up pretty nicely. Okay. Okay. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to actually throw this in a food prep container, which this food prep container is not really going to be big enough for this whole salad, but we're going to make it fit because there's a couple of other spots in this container. So what I would add to this, if I was going to take this meal as my lunch, I have a big appetite. So if I was going to take this, I would eat all of that. I would also throw an orange in here, one of those little easy peel oranges, and probably a little square dark chocolate in the other one. And that would be my lunch. All right, so we've got our meal prep. This is our Mediterranean chicken wrap. Oh, and we don't want to forget, we're gonna throw a wrap in a baggie and we're gonna put that in. So I usually close the lid and I'm gonna put that right on top of there so that I have it and I can spoon. Obviously there's gonna be way more here than is gonna fit in a wrap, but this stuff is so good that I have no problem just spooning this right in. Don't even need a wrap. All right, we're gonna move on to the next meal prep. All right, so for the final meal prep, we are gonna do a quinoa chop salad. So it's gonna be quinoa, chicken, and I just came up with a name at random. I'm sure you could tell as I was speaking, because this is using the dressing that I modified from that whipped feta dish that I was telling you about that I served over Christmas to some house guests. So I didn't really have a name necessarily, but I'm like, well, we've got garbanzo beans, we've got some quinoa, we've got chicken. We'll just call it a quinoa chicken garbanzo bean bowl. I'm probably gonna do maybe a 1/2 cup of quinoa. So this is quinoa that I did cook ahead of time. So it's pretty easy to cook and store in the refrigerator. I'm gonna throw in these garbanzo beans. So this is more of a salad. You could put this on a wrap, but because of the garbanzo beans and the quinoa, it already has a pretty good amount of carbohydrates in it. So you probably don't really need the wrap. All right, we're gonna throw in the rest of our pre-cooked chicken. And then again, we're gonna use the pre-cut veggies. So this one is usually good with a little bit of onion in it. Set that right there. And then I'm gonna just kind of throw veggies in here. This is one where I like to have a lot of the cauliflower in it. And then we'll add some red pepper for color. Said it doesn't really matter if a tomato gets in there or if a cucumber gets in there. And then I would start with, again, there's probably about 4 tablespoons of dressing here. So I'm going to start with maybe about 2, and I'm going to mix it up and see how it looks. It's probably going to need a little bit more. So when you do make that dressing, definitely make enough. It's coating it pretty well. I really like dressings, so we're going to add a little bit more in there. Okay. Okay, it smells really good. I can smell the smoked paprika. Mixed up good. We're gonna throw a little bit of that feta in there too. There we go. Mix it just a little bit more. Like I said, the feta, the cheese is optional. And if there are other veggies that you like, zucchini squash is really good for this. You can always use other. If you want to cook some mushrooms and throw it in these, you can do mushrooms in the egg bowl for breakfast. So again, got this really nice smoked red color from the paprika. So this is meant to be eaten more like a salad. So with a spoon or with a fork. A spoon is actually easier for this one. And again, the meal prep container is probably not quite big enough for the amount of this salad that you're going to end up with. And that's okay. So same thing with this. If I'm taking this with me to work, I'm probably going to add, some sliced apples or one of those mini easy peel oranges into this side. And I'm a dessert person, so I usually have a little square of dark chocolate after every lunch meal that I have. So I'm going to put that in the other side of this meal prep container. And so this is our third meal prep. And you could eat any of the things that we made today. You could eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And again, these are just easy things that as long as you have everything prepped ahead of time, you can throw this stuff in the fridge and you can throw it together in a matter of minutes and be on your way. So I hope that you found this helpful. I'm grateful that you have joined me for this video in my kitchen. If you do have questions, you can get in touch with me at kellybailey1980@gmail.com. So thank you for joining me.